In 1944, Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda stepped onto the dense, humid soil of Lubang Island. The air was thick with the scent of decay and salt. He carried a single, absolute command from his superior that would define the next 3 decades of his life. You are to hold this position. Do not surrender. Do not take your own life. We will return for you. These words were burned into his mind. When Japan surrendered in 1945, the global conflict ended. But for Onoda, the war was only beginning. He stood alone on the mountain ridges, a sentinel of a fallen empire, waiting for a dawn that refused to come. Days bled into years, and years into decades. Onoda saw the leaflets dropped by planes, white scraps of paper fluttering like snow through the tropical canopy. He heard the loudspeakers echoing through the trees, pleading for him to come home. But he burned the papers and ignored the calls, convinced they were clever traps set by a desperate enemy. He became a ghost in the brush. He sharpened his rusted bayonet with river stones and cleaned his Arasaka rifle until the metal gleamed in the moonlight. He survived by raiding local farms, stealing bananas and drying meat over small, smokeless fires to avoid detection. By 1974, he was a man of rags and shadows, still waiting for an officer who had long since returned to civilian life. His world was a circle of duty, rifle oil, and silence. Then, a young traveler named Norio Suzuki hiked into the forbidden zone. He found Onoda sitting by a campfire, his rifle aimed directly at the stranger's chest. Suzuki did not run. He sat down, shared his food, and spoke of a world that had moved on while Onoda remained frozen in time. Onoda lowered his weapon, but his spirit remained unyielding. "I cannot leave until my commander relieves me," he declared. Suzuki returned to Japan and tracked down Onoda's former major, now a simple bookseller. On the 9th of March, 1974, the two men finally met in the deep brush. The major stood before the aging soldier and read the official order of surrender aloud. Onoda stood at attention, his uniform tattered but his posture rigid, and saluted for the final time. The weight of 30 years of war finally began to lift from his shoulders. 2 days later, Hiroo Onoda walked out of the jungle. He carried his rifle, still functional after 3 decades, and his ceremonial sword. He marched to the local base and knelt before the Philippine president. With a steady hand, he laid his blade on the ground, a gesture of ultimate submission and peace. The war that had ended for the rest of the world 30 years ago had finally, in that single moment of profound silence, concluded for him. He was no longer a soldier of the shadows. He was a man returning to a world he no longer recognized, leaving his war behind in the dust of Lubang.